So we're quickly running out of things to say.
Yeah.
No. I think maybe you'll be splicing stuff together from last week, or just used it last week.
You know what the problem is?
What problem with what?
Right now.
What?
Oh, this. Is that we took a trip together today.
That's right.
We took a trip to Cycle World to get a seal, and we talked about everything we should have talked about on the podcast. Like we already had a 40-minute long conversation.
Well, I'm getting pumped up for going grocery shopping here in a minute.
Yeah. Well,
I like going to the grocery store. I see lots of people I know. Just like going to the Cycle World today.
Publix is going to seem riveting after this conversation.
Good.
So me and Bill decided to just buy the kit from Rocky Point, the Mikuni kit.
Okay.
I said, how much is your time worth? Because
he only shows up once every 6 months. So
exactly. we were trying to find the original picture of his bike to figure out if he had 40 millimeter bings on it or 32. Yeah, but I didn't want to walk that far. But the thing is, we first sold him that bike in 2020, so that we couldn't find it because it was way farther back than I remembered.
Bill, by the way, is a friend of ours. We built a bike for him a couple years ago, and then he decided to build his own R100 GS, and he's been gone now 6 or 7 months, and now he's back. He'll be back a couple of days, and then he'll be here and there, and he'll show up. So he's making a retirement out of it.
He's always welcome in the shop.
Always. We like Bill a lot. Plus he buys me lunch whenever he shows up, so you can't beat that. It's a great compliment. Good guy and free lunch.
But I would like to see him working on his third bike instead of seeing him.
Well, we got to get through this one first.
We're just taking the kit.
He's
going to be closer than
Right.
Which you could dial it. I mean, it just takes time and patience and test riding and coming back in.
It's all, a lot of that stuff seat of the pants. Unless you got a chassis dyno, which we don't.
Yeah.
Or an engine dyno, which we don't. But we've got a pretty good idea where to start, so it shouldn't take us too long to dial this bike in.
I did have a question. So I pulled the bike or the battery out of that red bike to test it.
The maroon. 2,500 mile 83 RT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if someone... Did I tell you the story where when I posted that, I called it the burgundy bike or the maroon bike?
Okay.
And somebody commented and they said, maroon? Maroon, that's actually magenta red. And
looks like maroon to me.
I said, blocked. I don't have time for that.
So the battery.
People are really great on Instagram, but people forget all the time that when you're on the internet, there's a human being on the other end, and it's just their job. And maybe they're not going to look up the BMW color code for every bike they talk about.
If somebody came in your shop and you said, "Hey, your jacket's over on the maroon bike," they'd find it, whether it was magenta, maroon, or whatever.
First off, magenta is not even a real color, so
right, well.
it has no color, no wavelength. It's an illusion created by your brain.
A lot of people in politics are the same way,
There you go. Anyways, so I pulled that battery out to load test it, and then it leaked on my hand.
Whoa! It was a wet battery?
Yeah.
The bike came in with a wet battery? An acid battery? When you fill up? Wow! And I hardly ever see them anymore.
Yeah. So it leaked on the floor in my hand this morning. Where do you want me to put that? It's by the door with the other batteries now, but I feel like there should be a safer spot for a battery.
Back of your car that never moves. I think it's a perfect spot for it. The one that's been out here for months that doesn't move anymore.
God, cars are the worst, man.
That's why I don't work on them anymore. They got too many wheels, doors, roof they hit your head on. I mean, a motorcycle, you sit here, easy. Air conditioning's on, music's on, you pull up on a little chair.
I'm trying to change the VTEC sensor on my S2001. which is a Honda Accord, a 5-seat Honda Accord, and from 2001. 3 bolts. How hard could it be? I could have done a rear main seal in the time it took me to. Like it's
That's funny.
It's like they intend for you never to touch it. Ever.
Well, that's why you said, I don't know why anybody would want to work on these, and then you said, but I'm glad they do.
Yeah. Thanks. Shout out to all the guys who are keeping
Keeping
vehicles
those
on the road.
4-wheelers running. So we've been working on taking this power lever and making it into a monolever. We've got the modified swing arm, the longer dry shaft on, got the rear drive stuck on. That's not the final one. I got another one coming. That's the one off one of my bikes.
And the reason you're doing that is because you think the monolever drive shaft or the monolever final drive is way more robust than.
Well, I think the whole setup is something that's less possibly a problem, less chance. And Andy wanted to try it, and so we're doing this. I just made the bracket to hold the cable, and we've got some little extension pieces. And so basically, other than Murray's doing the geometry on the shock, which we've done before, and then we'll get a new shock done, get a custom shock built for it. So it's been a kind of interesting job, and it'll have to come apart and be powder coated and all, but
Yeah.
Penske's making us a shock. They've made us 2 custom shocks before. Reasonable prices, good stuff. So yeah,
It's a pretty robust setup you got.
Took me 3 hours to make the bracket to hold
The brake line on
the
there?
brake line right there with the brake cable.
Yeah.
So I got that roughed out. So I'm moving along. I've got about all I can do now until we do the geometry on the shock. And then I bought another rear drive that'll go on here. It's a different ratio. So I've done majority of what I needed to do right off the bat. I've got about 8 hours in it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how it is. But it's making stuff and doing new stuff is fun.
Yeah.
We took this setup and sent it to Paul out in Arizona, and Paul copied it. So he's having his buddies, I think, who do helicopter stuff, make a dry shaft for us and balance it.
I think the cool thing about this too is you could play around a lot more with final drive ratios.
Correct. You got 4 or 5. The other one just has 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got no power lever bearings, no weird dry shaft problems, and no crazy angle with the shock. So.
Plus, it looks better.
Oh well, it looks different.
Yeah. Not to insult the power lever rear drive at all, but it's ugly.
I've never been a pet fan of them, so I don't own one.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of opportunity. I'm happy with my R80 GS. It works great.
So what was the problem that they were trying to solve with the power lever rear drive?
First of all, the Germans always like to
tinker. Yeah.
They like to tinker. Well, the English like to tinker. The Germans like to. I guess seem to be very engineering oriented. But I think what they thought is that when you shifted one of these bikes with the dry shaft going, the bike would sort of collapse and then pick up again. So it had the opportunity to hop up and down. And so by doing this, so it could move this way, the rear drive could stay on the ground where the rest of the bike went up and down, and it stayed. We've had this discussion with lots of people. I've never driven my bike and said, oh, it's going up and down. It never does that.
Well, you have the rubber cow effect, but...
Well, the dry shaft's got a spring in it, and the input shaft's got a spring in it, so you've got some way to pick up some of that motion.
Yeah.
This one is not a cush dry shaft. This is a straight dry shaft.
Okay.
It's still spring loaded in the input shaft. They did it for years on the /2s and /5s and 6s and 7s and all, and nobody ever complained about it. So I'm not sure. Maybe because they could.
Yeah.
They did it.
Interesting.
But, yeah. So this will be kind of interesting. It's actually moved along a lot faster than I would once I got all the parts here to do it. So now I'll swap rear drives when the other one comes, and then we'll get the geometry done. It'll take about 6 weeks to get the shock built and sent over from England to us. And then we'll start riding it, and we'll be curious to see, any different.
Yeah.
So, Chuck just finished this R100 RT, turned it into a kind of an urban scrambler.
Yeah.
and we put R100 GS handlebars on it and Hide Now tires on it, and changed some stuff on the bike. I think the guy will be real happy with it. We put the R80 GS solo seat and rack on it, modified that rack and the seat, and also we could put it on this bike. We've done 2 or 3 like that. It looks great, works well.
The seat
makes it look different.
Blends with the tank well a lot better than I thought it would.
Yeah, the whole thing works well. We did that on that blue bike over here that we sold with the red seat. We modified a rack to make it fit. We took off, we cut part of the R80 GS rack off and welded on an R100 rack. Did it on both those bikes, turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
So that bike is leaving. He's coming in another week to take that in. He also bought that red R100 GS that you spray painted.
Oh, okay.
He bought that one too, and he bought
Professionally
R100. He bought an R80 GS, the nice one from Florida, from us.
Okay.
So.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. He's happy with it.
I tried to crank up the green bike last night.
Okay, and what happened?
Nothing.
What do you mean, turn the key, nothing happened?
No, it's just that, so I'm wiring a late model switches to a wiring, the bike is a 74.
Well, it's the same thing that Garrett did on the R90S.
And I thought it was a 70, well, no, not exactly.
Well, it's the switches, you have to wire those late switches.
But this is what's different. When I started off working on the bike, I thought it was a 74 because the bike's a 74. Come to find out the wiring harness is from at least a 75. So.
Well, that makes it better for you, actually.
Yeah.
That's what we did on the other R90S. We put a later model.
And as I was putting it together, I was using a test light to test all my theories of what would work with what. And I was really hoping I'd put in enough test light time that it would grow over. But it's a complicated thing I'm doing. It's not the biggest thing in the world that it didn't work the first time. I just gotta. And then
that whole bike's for the good learning experience for you. Anyway,
yeah, and then I turned the left side flasher on and blew a fuse. So that's where I ended last night. But
that's why it's a good thing it's got fuses in it. Otherwise, you'd have a bunch of melted stuff on there.
That's true, and it's not with metal.
Directional signals.
Yeah, blown fuses is not uncommon either. So.
You just gotta have a ground. It grounds through.
You just gotta sort it out.
Just got one wire on each side instead of 2.
Yeah. But I do think I at least got a good idea of what's going on because my dash lights were going out when I was hitting the starter button, which probably just means that the power that should be going to the starter relay is going to a ground somewhere.
Probably not a ground, but the power to the starter relay comes off the diode board, and that power comes from the solenoid, which gets the main wire, big battery wire, from the battery to the solenoid, and then from the solenoid to the diode board, to the diode board to one side of the starter relay, out of the starter relay, and up to the key. So you may have something wrong in the key, or you may have something, maybe the starter's drawing too many amps. Don't know.
Yeah.
But you can figure that out.
I can. There's also some homemade wiring in there, so.
When you make it here, it's homemade.
That's another level.
Shop.
Yeah, I do my best. You can never. I do my best to make it so if someone else works on the bike, they'll figure it out.
Understand what's going on.
But you can only do so much unless you write like a manual about it.
Well, if you use the same color wires to do the same thing, if you've got a directional, you say, well, it's blue and red on the left side, and so if you had to splice something in or do something, you'd use the same color wire, so people would at least have a rough idea what's going on.
And every time I shrink wrap anything, if it's a ground wire, it gets a black shrink wrap. If it's a power wire, it gets a red shrink wrap.
Okay.
So I think that kind of leads, especially when I do stuff at the battery terminal. I always like to put red shrink wrap on anything that goes.
Well, you should use those sweat fittings that we have, the ones you use the heat gun on, that already have sheathing on them. You slide the wires in and you heat them and it melts the little ring in the middle. We have piles of them. We've been using them for a long time. Instead of using the little barrels, putting them together and putting the shrink wrap over it.
Yeah.
I'll show you that if you don't know what I'm talking about. They work pretty well. And you can shrink wrap over that if you want, but you just slide the two together and the heat gun melts the little ring of solder on it, and it's already got a special plastic that doesn't melt when you get to put the heat on it for the heat gun. I'll show it to you. And they got really good deals at Harbor Freight on them too. You can buy them real cheap.
Yeah, whatever.
But wiring is, you can't see the electricity, so it's always a little more challenging
It is.
to figure wiring out.
Yeah.
And especially, 74 was a 1 year only bike. 75 and 6 were similar, but not the same.
Mm-hmm.
But they only give you a wiring harness for the 5 and the 6, and sometimes they give you one that says /5 and /6 74, because the switches are similar. But then 75 and 76 are real similar, but not the same. The colors of the wires are different.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the diagram, you can figure out where they go. That part's the same, but the colors of the wires are different. So it makes it not as easy to just plug and play with the colors.
That might be what's going on. I might have done it perfectly for a 1974, but I had a 1975.
Just change the number on the title. You'll be good.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, because I only figured it out when I went to go wire the starter, and then there's one wire, like a double wire, that doesn't exist until 1975, and this wiring harness had it, so I said...
Well, the starter wire is the black wire comes off the starter relay, which is the back rack.
I'm talking about the starter relay.
Yeah.
So.
Well, good,
Yeah.
By the time you're 50 or 60, you'll have it down pat.
You know what I'm getting real good at?
Fixing your mistakes? We're all good at that.
And a little bored of is 81 through 84 RSs.
RTs. Worst stuff in the world to work on.
I was standing there today and I was just like...
Why did I volunteer to do this?
This is the fifth...
You did the red one, the silver one, the burgundy one. What else? Oh, you worked on the blue one, the RS. He's coming tomorrow to pick up his bike, by the way. Oh,
good.
Electricity's trying to go out.
Yeah, we're losing power.
Yeah, he's coming tomorrow. I said, come hell or high water. He's coming
Good.
tomorrow.
I
told him what his bill was. He was fine with it.
I noticed you've been starting that thing, or somebody's been starting that thing.
Yeah, I had Chuck ride it just to get another opinion.
Yeah. All he said was his speedometer was broken, and I said he knows.
Yeah, we already know that. Right.
And the tax intermittent.
Right. He didn't want that fixed. He'll get it fixed at some point.
I like those tires he has on there.
Okay.
The only thing I don't like about them is they say Harley Davidson on them.
Those are Dunlops.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put those on for him.
I was actually surprised at how well it handled on there. Considering
You
it's
can always
not
take a magic marker and
Yeah.
take the white off if it's raised letter Harley.
considering it's not Harley Davidson, I thought there would be like
Nobody can tell when it's spinning around.
it makes the exhaust louder. Having the
And it
Harley
depends
tires
on
in
where
there.
the tire ends up. You may not be able to see it behind the.
That's true.
So who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming we haven't had a lot of response about our open house. You were saying.
So I made a post with that graphic. Probably the worst performing post we've ever had. I'm not kidding. I was looking at it. Did I post a lot? I was looking at it, and it was like 3 hours later, and we had 25 likes, and I'm like, that is insane. That's like when I first took over the Boxworks Instagram. That's what the kind of likes we were getting. So, I'll post another thing about it.
We've got some emails from people saying we live too far away.
Yeah, and we're making another shirt. We're making the shirt we talked about last week.
Right.
If you were watching last
I'm
week,
making the shirt partially because my sister liked it so much.
I wore it to Nathan's family birthday dinner, and everyone, oh, you gotta make them, and I was like, this worked. And I didn't actually plan that. I just wear that shirt a lot.
Yeah, my sister thought it was the cat's meow.
Yeah, it is.
My niece liked it too. So
A genius must have made it.
it's not a shop shirt. It's white.
It's not a shop shirt.
Right.
It's a.
It's a dress shirt. It's a summer shirt. It's a hang around and wash your car shirt.
Yeah.
You can always take it off and use it to clean your window.
Well, it's natural. So it's not bright white. It's not the type of white you like spill some ketchup on and you never get the stain out. It's the type of white where you spill some wine on it and never get the stain out.
So it's kind of yellow to begin with.
Yeah, it's natural. It's natural.
So mustard blends right in.
It's eco-conscious.
Speaking about mustard, which I know we haven't been, but I just mentioned it. Yesterday I was at the grocery store and I was walking down the bread aisle. And I saw this guy, he was looking around kind of perplexed, and I said, it was like a million different breads, and I said, Yeah, if they only had a few breads, I said it would make it simple to make a choice. He said, no, you don't understand. So I'm looking for a hot dog bun. He said, do you know that you can't buy a hot dog bun that's sliced at the top so the dog sits on top? All the hot dog buns now are sliced down the middle, and you put it inside so it falls on the ground. He said, what happened to the good old hot dog where you stuff the hot dog in it, put the mustard and the relish and onions on it, we're done? And I said, if that's the worst problem you have today, it's probably not the end of the world. He goes, the older I get, the more this little shit bothers me. And I said, well, that's because people don't use common sense anymore. And he went, you're absolutely right. There's no common sense. Common sense would say, if you slice it halfway, it sits inside. Not slice it in half, you put it in, you squeeze it, it rolls on the ground, all the condiments roll on the ground. Why would they do that? I said, because it's probably easier to cut it in half than only go halfway down.
I have a question.
Does that have to do with hot dog rolls?
Couldn't you just churn